I've been studying the Mars-Neptune aspects, in particular Mars square Neptune and Mars and Neptune opposition. So I'm going to be bringing some information forward today for those that have these particular aspects in their chart. We can perceive our souls coming into this world, and the world is a school, and we're here to learn emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And these planets provide us with the lessons. So they are essentially the teachers that provide us with the lessons to learn what we have to learn in order to level up and move through what we have to in order to come to the next conclusion on our journey and spiral up to the next level. If we have managed to learn all the lessons that the configurations of the planets within our birth charts provide us with, we can see and feel and experience the results. I'm not talking about worldly success. I'm talking about spiritual triumph and victory over all of these subtler aspects within ourselves. So when we say we've made it, or it took us a long time to get here, those who are on a spiritual journey will understand it is the inner journey that we are conquering. And so I wanted to first just go over a little bit what Mars and Neptune are as planetary bodies. So these are impulses, teachers that have certain qualities to them. And the qualities that we can observe in the material realm aren't the same qualities that we're observing from a spiritual lens. And so in the material realm, we often speak of Mars as being a hot planet, but if you look at the average temperature of every planet, the sun, our star, not a planet, but the star would be the hottest. And then you have Venus, Mercury, the Earth on an average at 14 degrees Celsius, and then Mars at minus 60 degrees Celsius, so 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So we often associate this planet with heat, and that is mostly pertaining to its speed of movement in comparison to the other planets, and also its temperature relative to the more distant planets, such as Uranus, which is minus 224 degrees Celsius. And so it is relatively warm to our most distant planets, but it is still a cold planet. The hot associations, visually, it is a red planet. Red is usually associated with heat, but its impulse is to assert. And it is considered like the archetype is the warrior, which is associated with Mars. And it's the impulse to create in the world. It's our drives, it's our desires, it's our passions. And it is that part of us which asserts ourselves into the world. So whereas the feminine, the Venus, for example, is a receptive planet, Mars is an assertive planet, and it radiates itself. So it basically is expanding out. So these desires are expanding out into the world, and they are asserting themselves into the world through our speech and through our actions. And we also associate the qualities of the planets to what we're experiencing as they are transiting. So often you'll notice that when Mars is transiting, we can experience a surge, a strong desire, or a strong passion, a sudden impulse of rage or anger or hot temper. And this is because whatever energies have been laying dormant within our consciousness, which Mars is associated with, When that transit comes through, they are released and uncaged, and then we feel that crazy expansion into the world as they burst forth. And so it is also associated with Aries, the first house. So the body and these sensations are felt on a very visceral level. And so that primal aspect of ourselves and those qualities associated with the primal aspects of self are very visceral, and they are moving. When we are passionate and we have really strong emotions, we tend to move our bodies, and we tend to want to insert ourselves more into the world. Its speed is basically Mars travels from 0 to 1 degrees, 16 minutes per day, depending on its motion. And it takes about 2 years to go through all the signs. So staying in about one sign for a month and a half. Moving to Neptune, Neptune travels about 3 minutes per day. It takes about 165 years to go through all signs, staying in each sign for approximately 14 years. So we can see the difference here in speed, the quickness, that quicksilver is very different with Neptune, staying in each constellation for 14 years versus Mars, which only takes like a month and a half to move through each constellation. Neptune is the coldest planet in our solar system. Although we often associate Pluto as being the furthest planet away from us, Pluto isn't officially classified as a planet, and it's considered a dwarf planet. So technically, Neptune is the planet farthest away from us in the solar system. And so you have something that is very elusive and not as concrete in terms of our ability to understand it, because it is further away. So it's harder to see, it's harder to perceive. Well, you can't perceive it with the eye. So that gives us also an indication. Whereas Mars is a lot closer to the Earth. And so we are able to perceive the qualities of Mars a lot easier. But nonetheless, when these planets are transiting, how they influence us, we've been tracking for thousands and thousands of years. And so we've gained quite a bit of knowledge on what we can perceive from them. So I'd like to discuss a little bit the archetypes that are associated with Mars. Mars is a planet that is associated with the masculine impulse, as I mentioned previously. And the masculine has 4 main archetypes that are generally accepted. It's the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And each archetype has 2 counter shadow archetypes. And so looking at these can give us an idea about the higher octaves and the lower octaves of the Mars impulse. Also, Gigi Young has put out a really good series on, it's called The Mars Mysteries in Plain Sight, and she encapsulates really well what this Mars impulse is from a Rudolf Steiner perspective, and who has put out quite a bit of information from the Theosophical Society. I would recommend watching that series because she goes into the negative octave. And so when the archetype of Mars becomes the tyrant, certain things begin to manifest in this world. And so we can see that in the impulse to control everything through science or through artificial intelligence, in terms of how far it can be pushed in separating us from the more natural and organic evolution of our species. So going back to these archetypes on these masculine archetypes, we can see in this visual here, this was taken from Scott Jeffrey's website, and he just lays everything out And so you can see that the king has two distinct um, shadow archetypes associated with it, and it's the tyrant and the weakling. And the warrior of Mars, or the masculine in its purest form, has two shadow archetypes, the sadist and the masochist. The magician has the detached manipulator and the innocent one. And the lover has the addicted lover shadow and the impotent lover shadow. So whether you're female or male, when we speak of planetary influences, we're all affected. We all have an animus and an anima. We all have that masculine energy within us, and we all have that feminine Venusian energy within us. So understanding these can be seen from both masculine and feminine. And this is basically the culmination of the energies if they are not in alignment. And so we have this energy sitting here within us, and we're striving for the healthy masculine archetypes. We're moving towards the healthy masculine archetypes and integrating the lower shadow aspects of these archetypes by doing the healing work, by really learning the lessons that Mars has to teach us in this school of life. And by learning these lessons, doing the healing work, and integrating, we can really start to encapsulate and embody the purest form of the Mars impulse, the healthiest masculine archetypes within us. Before we come to maturity with Mars, I just want to briefly mention that there are archetypes that precede. And so they all have their shadow archetypes as well. The high chair tyrant is the weakling prince. The grandstander bully is the coward. The know-it-all trickster, the dummy. And the mama's boy, the dreamer. And so we can all associate with the lessons of these masculine archetypes, these Martian lessons and archetypes that we have to move through on our hero's journey. And so becoming more aware of them, we're able to identify what they are, and then we're able to move through the process of integration and come into our fullest potential with the lessons that Mars has to teach us. So there's a great association between Mars, the impulse of Mars, when it's in its higher octave, and that of the hero, which is born from integrating the lessons of Neptune. And Neptune, the archetypal energy, is this kind of universal principle associated with myth and dreams, transcendence and dissolution, mystery and magic. It manifests in fantasies and projections, images and illusions, and gives rise to the yearning for paradise and the quest for the ideal. And so essentially, we can use the warrior and the magician and the king archetypes of the Martian planet to conquest the Neptunian impulses in the best way possible, in the highest fashion. The Greek god associated with Neptune is Poseidon. Michael Connolly speaks about an Irish archetype and character that's associated with Neptune. Manannan is a burly man who rode over the waves on a horse named Indbar and Eonbar, water and foam. He is described as a trickster who wears an ephemeral, shimmering, mutable, swirling cloak of shifting color and light, which can confer invisibility and can in fact take on any color. He carries a crane skin bag of magical treasures, and he is God to the sea. So we can attune to the currents and depths of our life. Neptune being the furthest planet, is that which we are grasping to perceive in this reality that is still outside of our normal sensorial perceptions. So it's something that is connected to what is greater than us. It is often associated with the collective, but even higher in terms of where we are coming from, right? So the collective is often more associated with Uranus and Aquarius, the 11th house, whereas Neptune is even further in distance, and perhaps distant galaxies, distant universes, the angelic realms, moving towards the creator of all things. And so it's the unconscious, it's the super consciousness, it's the highest forces that we can tap into while we're here. Its association is with what is mystical, and how it translates in our life is the sensations of bliss, nirvana, art, right? Our connection to oneness, our connection to the womb, and our connection to God, to grace, to self-sacrifice, right? It's very much connected to everything that is humanitarian and philanthropic. And on the flip side, it is that which can repress, right? Through illusions and delusions, through the unconscious, which is not, which doesn't become conscious. And so we can become the prey to our own deceptions and our own manipulations, right? And it's the complete disintegration of who we are. So when you move that far out from Midgard, or from this planetary realm, and move towards Neptune, we're becoming so far out, that we're expanding so far out, that it is easy to lose ourselves, right? And to disintegrate. So the disintegration of the personality and the denial of aspects of ourselves. You know, this is where martyrdom comes in, and simply becoming too self-sacrificing. And as we know, that is when we become the victim. So I'm just going to read one last description by Michael Connolly. He describes that under the influence of Neptune, there is a risk of becoming convinced your lies are truth, and that you may reorganize the world to suit oneself. Watch for all these telltale signs of grandiosity. You cannot control or manipulate Neptune. If you try, she rises like a cobra and destroys you. And so we can often associate our experiences with Kundalini energy as well, being this kind of this Neptunian energy that comes in and just dramatically brings forth everything that has been unseen into our immediate perception, right? These mystical experiences that we have. And when we try to control them, we lose control completely. And so if you have Mars in opposition with this energy, the Mars is the desire and the drive, the personal will, the personal ego that is very much embedded in the personality. And when that energy begins to rise and it comes into opposition with this very Neptunian, otherworldly influence of mystical experiences, dreams, and things that we can't really truly understand in a very concrete way, Mars becomes toxic, because as it attempts to control, it loses control. And so this is where the seduction of bliss, addictions to alcohol or codependency, illusions about who we are can come into play. And Mars begins to rage and can then become the tyrant and commit crimes and atrocities in the world. So when Mars squares Neptune, this experience becomes very psychological. It is working in the inner realms. It is happening within us. And we're perceiving these energies clashing very much within our own psyche. And so balancing these energies, if you have Mars square Neptune versus a Mars opposition Neptune, are very different. And that is something that we can just observe. So I was inspired to put together a Mars Neptune opposition video about a year ago. I did that, and I didn't have as much information at the time. And so I sort of deleted it, and I'm coming back now with more information, especially because Mars is squaring Neptune again right now. And I've just been aware of this energy. And as I keep on working with this energy within myself, I am able to gain more information about it and sort of begin to truly embody the lessons. And it is definitely one of the most challenging aspects within my chart. And so there's a lot of emphasis. I've been putting a lot of emphasis on really learning what these planets have to teach me and why they're in opposition within my chart. Not so much understanding where they come from. I do know that within a past life, a few of my past lives, I experienced themes related to the Mars impulses and lessons and the Neptune impulses and lessons. Very specific downloads that I got about these past lives. So when I did my chart and I really started looking and analyzing this Mars Neptune opposition, I could see the same themes resurfacing. And obviously my life is completely different era, different time, everything is completely different. But the themes that I am still working through, I believe that is also passed down, something that could be passed down through the ancestral lineage. That's just something to take into consideration that might be of interest to a few people. Because this is transiting right now, I happened to see a video by Adam Ellenboss. He has a really great astrology school, Nightlife Astrology, and he entitled, "Whatever You Do, Don't Stand Out. Mars retrograde squares Neptune." And he does really great transit readings, and I really like his approach. He brings in personal stories to help us understand what the qualities of these transits are and the lessons. And he read a passage by Liz Green in her book on Neptune. And it's all about the contacts between Mars and Neptune, in particular, the hard aspects, the squares, and the oppositions. And so I'm going to read the exact passage that he read, because I think it's worth passing on, because it encapsulates really, really well what this square and this opposition is all about, and everything that it encompasses. So here we go. The contacts of Mars and Neptune have been much malaligned in astrological literature. Evertine mentions weakness as well as sickness, addiction, dislike of work, and fanaticism. He concedes that inspiration might be a product of the benign aspects, but it is clearly reluctant to find anything pleasant in this complex pairing of planets. The hard aspects, in particular, are associated with sexual abuse and black magic. The creative dimension of Mars-Neptune is sometimes described, but is usually limited to the actor or magician. And the contact is often seen as dangerous, to be fought against or transcended. There is no doubt that the Mars-Neptune can manifest in problematic ways. So can any Neptune aspect, or for that matter, any planetary aspect. But we need look beneath Mars-Neptune's behavior patterns to the meaning of the core. To understand why this contact appears with regularity in the charts of those with serious drinking or drug problems, as well as serious physical disabilities of the Neptunian kind. Mars, the sun's fighting arm, The functions of aggression and desire are fundamental to independent physical and psychological life. By wanting something and becoming angry or frustrated, a child begins to separate from the original fusion with the mother and forms a sense of his or her own body identity and personal potency. In this sense, Mars is like the Babylonian fire god Marduk, who battles the sea mother to create the world. We become ourselves first through what we want and our primary desires, our physical, passional, and life-defending, long before solar consciousness transforms raw libido into what we call goals and aspirations. Talking about identity on an abstract level is insufficient. Sooner or later, one will be called upon to make a stand or fight for one's autonomy in outer life. If the function of Mars is ailing, one cannot properly separate, and one may experience difficulty in actualizing whatever goals and wishes emerge in adult life, or one may disassociate altogether from desires and aggressive feelings, pushing them into unconsciousness where they fester at leisure. This buried rage may be expressed covertly towards others or internalized against oneself. Blaming parents for creating this problem is too simplistic an approach. Although the childhood environment may exacerbate Mars conflicts, seeds must fall on fertile soil in order to sprout. Mars Neptune inherently avoids any overt expression of the will because of Neptune's longing for fusion. Eden is a world without Mars, for anger and oneness are mutually exclusive. In paradise, the animals do not eat one another, nor is individual initiative, the natural outgrowth of desire, welcome in the garden. It is construed as disobedience. The fusion is broken. The original sin is committed, and expulsion from the garden follows inexorably from this transgression. Oedipal desires are sin in Eden, not because of the erotic fusion they demand, but because mother or father will not countenance competition. Mars Neptune will therefore seek to fulfill its desires while ensuring no one is offended. Neptune's receptivity to collective feelings transforms Mars instead of the thuggish warrior of Homer's Iliad. He emerges a subtle magician who understands the power of participation mystique and the enormous appeal of the word we. Mars Neptune can enter others' dreams and longings, expressing I want with such delicacy that it seems that everybody wants it too. This can be a great gift expressed most typically in Neptunian arenas, the art, in the therapeutic field. It may also be a greater asset to the politician and the military leader. In all these fields, the ability to invoke participation mystique is necessary. The actor must be attuned to the audience, and the therapist or counselor must have compassionate identification with the client, as well as the ability to draw out feelings and insights in a subtle and non-aggressive way. The political or military leader must inspire the hearts of his or her followers. Without this, the imposition of discipline will only provoke rebellion. Mars Neptune, like Dionysus, is a seducer, but sometimes as a collective, we need to be seduced. This longing lies at the core of religious worship, as well as the catharsis of the musical or theatrical performance. It is a feeling of shared aspiration without which we are abandoned in the wasteland, alone and without hope. In the world of Mars Neptune, the ecstasy has a goal. The dilemma lies in the integrity of that goal and how it is pursued. Mars's innately self-centered desires, when diluted with Neptunian waters, must include others if the individual's needs are to be fulfilled. Thus, desire is purged of sin because it is ostensibly aimed towards everybody's salvation. This is the spirit of the Crusades, in which appalling barbarity was sanctioned in the name of redemption, and in which the face of Tiamat is visible beneath the holy trappings. Yet it is also the spirit of Alexander Dubek, who had Mars sextile Neptune, fighting selflessly for his country. Heroic martyrdom has many faces, some of them closely allied to terrorism and genocide, and some of them deeply noble. If other aspects in the birth chart suggests deep feelings of inferiority and inadequacy, usually represented by a troublesome Saturn or Chiron, then Mars-Neptune's magic may be enlisted by the infant and become both a means of avoiding rejection and a means of acquiring power, without shouldering either the responsibility nor the consequences. Aggression may then be masked by apparent docility, and the rage which lurks beneath the surface may become the chief factor behind drug and alcohol addictions, which reflect anger and vengeance against life as much as the desire to escape life. When a well-lit channel cannot be found for Mars-Neptune's romantic heroism, political, military, scientific, and artistic, it may be sought in darker waters. Mars-Neptune may also elect like Charles Manson, who has them in exact conjunction to play the anti-hero who destroys others and himself, rather than endure the dreariness of a decent but unglamorous life. For Mars-Neptune, aggression and desire cannot easily be directed outward into life. Because of the fear of separation this invokes, it may seem better not to desire at all. Sexual disinterest and general apathy are common complements to alcoholism and drug addiction. The death wish is obvious in these expressions, and so is the element of masochism. If one merely wants to exit the stage, one can find less painful, drawn-out means. Mars-Neptune is also linked with sexual masochism, as well as its reverse, the desire to inflict pain. This confusing medley of inverted desires, guilts, longing for fusion, rage, and impotence reflects a powerful but thwarted identification with the heroic redeemer victim. It arises not from any intrinsic Mars-Neptune evil, but a personality that is too infantile to meet the challenge of expressing the myth in creative, life-enhancing ways. Impotency can breed cruelty, as any rapist knows. The same may be said of Mars-Neptune's black magic. It is difficult to define this in any sensible way, for one is reminded of a Dennis Wheatley novel with incantations to Asmodeus and the remains of sacrificed chickens in the basement. There will always be people who are happy to avail themselves of Neptunian mass vulnerability to achieve the power they want. Most politicians dabble in a little of it, one way or another, although usually without the chickens. Political slogans are a form of incantation, and political symbols are a species of amulet. Black magic can be observed in anyone who, because of his or her own wounds and insecurities, manipulates the unconsciousness of another to achieve the primal omnipotence which Neptune secretly craves. What differentiates Mars-Neptune black magic from Mars-Neptune white magic is the consciousness of the individual and the personal integrity in which he or she has managed to build. Idealization of sex may also be a Mars-Neptune preoccupation. There are many deities and myths, both male and female, who do not merely procreate, but who with their immense glamour and fertility generate races of heroes who are irresistible to mortals and gods alike. These images tell us something of the sexual fantasy world of Mars-Neptune. Sometimes if combined with wounding Saturn or Chiron aspects to Mars, Venus, or the Moon, Mars-Neptune can reflect the Don Juan of either sex perpetually seeking sexual conquest to affirm his or her own divinity. More often, it reflects the constant fantasy of such conquest, which can generate a sense of discontent and frustration and personal relationship. If the fears and insecurities are great enough, the individual may experience such a vast gap between fantasy and reality that sexual satisfaction on the earthly level ceases to be attractive at all. Mars-Neptune may reflect the celibacy of a monk or nun, not only from a sense of spiritual vocation, but also because union with God is preferable to union with flawed mortal flesh. Equally, Mars-Neptune, because of its extreme sensitivity to deeper psychic currents, can be an inextinguishably sensuous and sensitive lover, able to conjure the delights of Eden. Sexual pleasure, rather than earning expulsion from the paradise garden, becomes the chief means of returning to it. When Mars-Neptune goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong. Yet without its white magic, we would have a sadly impoverished world where there would be no artists to bring us our Dionysian ecstasy, nor imaginative leaders, teachers, scientists, or healers to help us achieve our collective dreams. What an incredible passage. There are so many things in here that just very pointedly go and draw out the lessons that anyone with a Mars square Neptune or Mars opposition Neptune have to move through. And we are only given lessons that we're able to meet. And so I believe that although the lessons in these aspects are incredibly deep, their potential for creative expression in the world is just tremendous. And so contemplating all of this, the archetypes of these two planets, and contemplating their combination, their combining force, like contemplating the energies that the two of them combine together and bring forward, can really allow us to move through some rather complex lessons. Every birth chart has a whole array of complex lessons. And the deeper we go, the more complex things get. But I believe that it is also a gift to be able to really integrate this stuff on such a high level, in such depth. And the potential is incredible, right? So if you can see yourself in any of these lessons or any of these themes, and really just allow yourself to sit face to face with what they have to offer in terms of growth, I'm sure that you can begin to taste the efficiency of what Mars and Neptune have to offer versus the repressive aspects and lessons, the repressive aspects that they can bring. So anyone who has either Neptune on the ascendant would feel this strongly. Anyone who has Neptune in the 8th house, so in the 1st house, on the ascendant, in the 8th house, will definitely feel this as well. And in the gene keys, I've drawn some connections. I find that the gene key 4 can be very much associated with it, moving from intolerance to understanding and then forgiveness, coupled with, gene key 51, let's say, where you're moving from agitation to initiative and to awakening. There's 64 gene keys in total. And so if you have this placement in your chart and you've already associated it with some of your gene keys, I'd love to hear about that in the comments, as well as your human design. I associate it with Vedic astrology to Ashlesha nakshatra, similarities, and there's a lot of correlations between the two. And so as well for Mayan astrology and any other system that you're looking at, I'd love to hear any associations to Mars square Neptune or Mars opposition Neptune in the other systems that you're looking at. So I hope that this video was helpful for everybody. Continue growing, continue striving. If you'd like to book a session with me, you can do so at www.inspiringplayfulevolutions.com under Systems of Gnosis. There's a service offering, and I read astrology charts as well as look at, I juxtapose a bunch of systems, plug your information into a bunch of systems, and then compare and really see what's highlighted and what sort of aspects are standing out, more difficult, challenging themes to move through and lessons to move through. Lessons that these planetary spheres are providing us with in order to spiral up to that next level of awareness and expansion of consciousness. Wishing everybody much courage on their journeys.